Welcome to the Pantheon Plus Rewind. What's up, and welcome to episode 98 of the Pantheon Plus Rewind. Let's spend an hour together ascending to the heights of fandom when it comes to our future MMO home, that being Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. So today we're gearing up to conquer the April 2022 developer update. We're traversing a discussion about faction gain in Pantheon, and we are climbing the lower peaks of the Daedrum Ascent. So, limber up, pack a bag, and get your mind right for the expedition with me, Theric, and my mountaineering co-host, Desrin, for this week's Rewind. Oh boy, Desrin, it was supposed to be the storm of the century here. And we got all hyped up for a big storm in my area. They actually canceled school for 2 days, which they haven't done apparently in 25 years.
Ooh.
Like preemptively canceled it. There was all kinds of, they rescheduled a hockey game, like major stuff.
You know it's serious when they're messing with the hockey.
Yeah. When sports gets involved, then you know people with power and money are involved. But I got to tell you, it was kind of a bust.
Oh.
We got like maybe a foot of snow, and that's like Sunday night here. I don't know what the big deal was. So I'm not disappointed that it was a bust, but I actually had plans to like create an underground, snow fortress of sorts. I talked about this on the Guild Discord a little bit. Made it into a thing.
I was wanting the Frozen Sanctum, man, because I've been all like I've been lore diving lately, and it was just on my mind. I'm like, dude, you gotta like recreate that in real life. We'll put it on the fan piece, section.
Totally, and I didn't get to do it, so it'll have to wait till next year. But you know what? I'll be appreciative that we didn't get it and go with that. But that's what's going on here. What's up in your neck of the woods?
Oh man, I feel like so busy. I mean, you know some of the things that I'm working on that I can't say, but yeah, it's like that stacked on top of other stuff. I feel a little bit crazy right now. I'll admit, but it's good. It's good.
So that might be something to do with the amount of caffeine you've consumed this morning, which you were telling me about.
Oh, yeah. Full disclosure to the entire audience. The amount of caffeine that I've had in the last, 7 hours is probably more than I should have had in the last 7 days on account of over the last few days having less than 7 hours of sleep in total. So
that's a dangerous combination.
Triple sevens
on there. But it makes for a good podcast.
We'll see.
I say we journey forward while you're still hyped up on caffeine. So
let's hype forward.
Let's do it. Our brave raid party this week is going to hit the heights for us and scout for danger. So we don't want to run into any carnivorous foliage. So let's give them a shout out. We've got Ziplocs on the Darkmer Rogue, Sparrow on the Elf Ranger, Bounty Coat on the Human Wizard, Screech on the Scar Bard, Wiki Woo on the Human Enchanter, Shuriken on the Dwarf Cleric, Feldrin on the Archai Warrior, Redbeard Flynn on the Darkmer Necromancer, Jason as always on the Scar Beardlord, Man of Rohan on the Ember Elf Ranger, Bitcrunch on the Ashen Elf Shaman, and a new member to the party, that being Horsasaurus on the Human Warrior. So another warrior to the mix is always good, so more tankage.
Heck yeah.
As always, I want to thank everyone who stops by, supports the show, whether you're in the party or not. We really appreciate you hanging out for our weekly adventures. Special thanks this week to the folks that have sent in their messages for the upcoming episode 100 show. I really appreciate that. I cannot wait to play them on the show and get everybody else a chance to hear them because they're really good. So if you want to support the show, you can use the super chat function during the YouTube premiere, or you can head over to our Patreon page to check that out. It's linked in the show notes. So, having said that, Desrin, you ready to start this trek to the summit with me?
Let's brave the wilds.
This week in Visionary Realms News and Notes. Nice. So, of course, we're breaking down the what we saw in the April development update from VR. This was on Thursday last week, and this one was jam-packed. There was so much going on here, but really featured Minus and Ronick sharing some updates from each of VR's departments to basically say what they've been working on lately and that kind of thing. So we heard from Kyle about programming and networking. We heard from Kim on the quality assurance side of things. Adam gave us some design information, and then Minus and Ronick themselves gave us some news from the art team and HR side of things. So, as always, we discuss a lot of this on Pantheon Plus U after the show. So I'm going to try and cover some things here that we didn't talk about to make sure we sort of hit everything. But again, like I said, it was a jam-packed update, and there's a lot to go over. So if you want to go and watch Pantheon Plus U, it's on our YouTube channel, and you'll see what we talked about there. But Desiree, I thought a couple of specific items that I think we need to dig into. First one, let's talk about the networking status, because this, I think, is the number one thing everybody's really hoping to hear about right now.
Yeah.
And we've discussed it before, right? So yeah, there's, so much of the Pantheon's stage of development rests on the network development. And I want to read a couple quotes from Kyle that he gave on the dev update. He said they're focused on bringing vinyl to production level, and that has actually been finished. So they're now integrating it into the game.
Yep.
He's working on this full time, and he said, you guys will hear more about this very soon. So that's exciting, right? I know very soon, we kind of made a joke about it on the show. Like, there's imminent, there's soon, now very soon. Kind of curious as to what might be next with this, but it's exciting nonetheless, because I wanted to go back and listen to it a couple times just to make sure I heard it right, what he said. And, honestly, knock on wood, it doesn't sound like there's been any real roadblocks that they've come across so far. Mm-hmm. We look at the timeline of the networking implementation. We're basically in the second month of the time that they've said they're focused now. They're doing this full time. So the clock is ticking, and the time has gone by actually fairly quickly in my mind, at least for me, maybe not for others, but I think it's a good sign. So I think they're coming along nicely. What do you take from this, Des? Anything?
I mean, yeah, it like you said, it doesn't seem like any roadblocks were hit, at least nothing big, right? And then, like, if you recall, the forecast for that final hookup was supposed to be around 2 months. So,
right.
I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Optimistically speaking, I know, guys, I know. Optimistically speaking, we could be hearing about the whole network hookup getting wrapped up before the next dev stream. No, I'm not counting on it, of course. Like, this is me, but it's definitely more than soon. It's very soon, right? So, but no, seriously, like, kind of judging by his phrasing, like, kind of how he's talking. Besides his, Kyle's demeanor seems really good, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's saying things like, all that's left now is, hooking this final thing up to the player controller or whatever. And it's just, I don't know, just seems really confident. And I even, like, almost felt like he sounds a bit relieved,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think he, obviously realizes how important this is, and he knows that if things could have gone wrong, or if they can go wrong, it doesn't sound like that's happened.
Yeah.
Right. So he's speaking with confidence that things are moving at the pace that they had anticipated.
Yeah.
So that's why I think you and I both are sort of focused in on the 2 month time frame window that we were sort of, not explicitly
loosely
given.
Yeah. It was like, and nothing I would hold them to or anything like that. But like the exciting thing for me, it was the whole deal about Kyle saying, I've been kind of doing this part-time this whole time, but now I'm like full-time. I'm like dedicated to this unless there's like a fire that needs to get put out elsewhere, right? And and I mean, that just kind of sounds like we're unleashing the beast, right? Like like I think someone in chat actually made like the comparison of Kyle to Rock Lee from I just think it's great, man. He's taken off the training weights. You just let him do his thing.
Yeah, he's in his element right now, right? So, looking forward to hearing more about that, and hopefully, that would be great if next month's update comes with some real good news about the networking. That would be quite the relief.
Or maybe before that, I think you had some.
I don't know. Well, I mean, there is a glimmer of hope, and this came from chat during the stream. So Ben Dean has been in chat for the last few streams and just replying to some comments and trying to keep some information flowing. And there was one that came out in this stream that somebody was asking, as many people are, about testing sessions. When might the next pre-alpha testing session come? And the chat response he gave was, and I'll quote, keep an eye on our site, streams, and social media for upcoming testing schedules. So, read into that what you will.
Yeah, exactly. It might be a generic response, but...
Yeah, and we do see that sometimes where it's just, it doesn't really it's not intended to give any information. It's just to sort of, allay concerns or allow that it is going to happen at some point. We just don't know when. But sometimes they could also the option is always there to just ignore those questions too, right? So I think for me, I look at it as being when they're not ignored, it's a good sign. And there's somebody, there is something to take from it. So it was nice to see that.
Yeah.
And glad to hear from Ben.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's talk about the next point then on the art and animation front. So they showed some new weapons and some shield designs, which looked pretty darn good.
I mean, some is kind of an understatement. I've got to toss my lot in here because that was a lot.
It was a lot. Yeah, man. I really liked the halberd and the sort of the long pole arm stuff that they showed. I thought that the detailing on it and the material looked amazing.
Yeah.
So I was actually looking at the comments on their YouTube video this morning, and our friend Zergjerk was in there, of course. Yeah, I know, right? He's in there with the spear concerns, but we've seen spears before. And Philip Kedge actually replied to his comments saying, "Don't worry, spears are in there." So we didn't see any spears, but we know they're in there. So we did see a lot of other stuff. We saw daggers again, some shields, which I know that tanks and the paladins and some other folks out there are really appreciative of.
The glaives, that was a kind of surprising thing. A lot of them look kind of like blade stabs, just a kind of exotic weapon type that I was not expecting.
I don't know, when was it? It was recently that Joppa was saying something. It might have been on stream that he said he really likes those types of weapons for his character. That's his go-to is these really long, distance reach weapons kind of things. So, maybe they got a little preferential treatment, but
hey, I think I love the whole idea of blade stabs and since I may as well do the Elden Ring plug for the podcast, but
it won't be the last
the twin blades, right? That's what it reminded me of, was the twin blades. And I mean, what a just cool weapon. I mean,
I need to find that weapon. I have the charm, I have the whatever it's called for it that makes it better, but I don't have any blade weapons yet, or twin blade weapons. So anyway, that's our first Elden Ring mention, probably not the last. There was something that Ronak said that I wanted to key in on here. He did say that they wanted to show us something like a new big bad boss, or big baddie, I think is the way he said it, that they've been working on. But apparently the powers that be sort of nixed the idea. So maybe that's something that's coming down the road. And Desert, I'm going to throw out a crazy theory, and you can tell me that I'm nuts here, but do you remember in the DRT, the last one, Holly talked about being tasked with creating some artwork to create a new boss headpiece?
Oh yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah, totally.
So I had this in my head when we watched the stream, that they showed the interior of the Daedrum Ascent, and there was that dragon head. I thought maybe this is the boss headpiece that they, it kind of teased us with, and maybe I'm making connections here where they shouldn't be, but I don't know. That's just what I do. I mean, if you've watched any of my lore videos, this is what I do. So what do you think about that?
Very well, I might add. Dude, I think that's as good a theory as any, right? I mean, I wouldn't stretch, right? But with the whole Daedrum Ascent thing, I was having a little bit of fun trying to make some connections and predict as well. So who knows? You might prove to be spot on with that, and it's a nice hidden nugget.
And if I'm wrong, then
no one's going to remember.
So
yeah, exactly.
we're all good.
Exactly. That's how it works. Yeah. Make wild predictions, and then time goes by and no one remembers.
Right. Exactly.
I did want to touch on something from this section, though, because they did talk a decent amount about animation work, right? And animation's been kind of that, one of those little pain points, right, for years. Like, actually, probably the entire duration of the project, animations have been criticized. But may as well highlight this a little bit. Although I was kind of trying to decipher some of the phrasing that they're using. Like what Minus and Ronick were trying to get at when they're talking about, I think they use the phrase in-betweens when they're talking about animations, because they kind of hopped around a little bit, talking about this thing and that thing. And I don't know, it was a bit confusing among like the rest of the stream, which was, very not confusing, which I very much appreciated. But this part was kind of a little bit all over the place. And even though I've done some animation work, I was like, I couldn't tell exactly what they're trying to get at. Because there's, I think at one point he said the in-betweens have been drawn, but not implemented. And, they clearly talked about the idle animations, which sound awesome that they're doing that, specific to the different basic weapons too. So not just a generic, sway.
Right. Standing there breathing. Yeah.
Yeah. And then interestingly enough, they talked about the several different casting animations, which, I mean, that's just awesome. I don't know about you, but how you deliver a spell, how your character moves when you cast in games, really matters. Right.
Totally.
I still remember, Dragon Age, was one of the most satisfying, to me, with flinging fireballs and stuff. But
well, I mean, I think so too. I can think of numerous games that come to mind when I think of casting animations and how impactful they can be. And even recently, I think when they showed off I'm trying to remember which stream it was. So the last one with the one where we saw a lot of enchanter stuff, and I made a video about that. I thought the casting animations in that were so sharp, and that's the one we have the sort of the HD, Ultra HD montage made up. I think if you really focus in on looking at the casting animations, I think they're pretty sweet, So
yeah, so them expanding on that is even more exciting, right? Just so that you have a nice variation of animation, so it's not like you're doing the same move over and over, just different spell effects,
Right.
But then Minus kind of brings up some it says frame by frame renderings, which, I mean, I don't know. He might be talking about something called keyframing, which is basically animation where you just kind of set poses throughout an animation, and then the animation system kind of ties it all together, smooths it all together so that you don't have to literally move everything for each frame. But again, I'm not sure if that's what he meant. Same with the in-betweens, and it's just something that I do wish that was explained a little bit better. Nothing critical, just, good opportunity, since animation is a decently touchy subject. Less so nowadays. I see a lot less people complaining nowadays, but
Well, the thing is, they did say that they're going to be there. I mean, they were talking about the newsletter coming out, and they said that this is something that there's going to be quite a bit of information on in the newsletter, with combat, at least combat animations, but maybe also combat mechanics. It was sort of hinted at without any specifics.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I made a note of that because Minus really wanted to tease something, right? Interestingly enough, the phrasing that was used here, I'm just trying to make sure I get it here so I don't misquote him. But Minus says, Tehom will be talking about something that people haven't heard of yet in combat.
Yes, that's
in the upcoming newsletter, and it's something that is going to affect everyone that plays. So it sounds really major, but it's mysterious. Who knows? But
Well, that's something to look forward to for sure. So I definitely keep your eyes and ears peeled for that when the
Oh yeah.
newsletter comes out this month. Now let's move on to the next one. The quality assurance piece. This is something that they brought up. It's both, timely and relevant to what's been talked about lately. This is from Kim. They specifically mentioned how they're testing multiple HDRP builds and doing it with, and this is the quote, they're trying odd groups, odd numbers of people, larger groups, medium groups, so on and so forth. So I thought this was really like in line with recent discussions about Pantheon's group and solo play philosophy, which, you can definitely check out their Parting the Veil podcast or the last episode here of the Rewind, where we had a really lengthy discussion on the subject. So, I mean, I've always believed that one of the reasons we don't see more group focused MMOs is because it's so hard to design content that is applicable to a wide array of skills and abilities and tools when you multiply that times 6 or times 5 or 4, how many people in the group, right?
Keeps getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what I'm saying, right? Like they're testing out, and Kim is talking about like taking on content with a duo or maybe a 3 or 4 people person group. Yeah. I think this is really important. And I think this is sort of like a hidden element that is going to make a vast difference in the content and how we experience it. Because we spoke about this last week, and Desrin, you were saying specifically your experience comes with, mostly smaller groups or duoing. And I know a lot of people in the community have said the same thing traditionally. So I'm wondering, like, when you heard her say this, how did that hit you?
I mean, obviously I'm all for this, right? The main takeaway for me is just like, I'm glad that this is still continuously at the forefront of their mind. Because all in all, this is not a traditional modern linear game. And since it's more freeform, players are going to kind of hit all those gray areas, right? And I do always find myself enjoying the 2-person, the 3-person groups most, just because they're the easiest to organize, right? Of course, like yeah. I love a full group, a 6-person group, but most like modern MMOs kind of have this, either or policy. I feel, and where you just kind of either you're solo or you're in a full group, like doing instances. Yeah. There's like no in between. There's like no content. There's nothing that's meant to stretch you as a solo player or challenge you in a duo group. It's just solo, easy mode, or full group. And so but like the reason I think is just like socially makes it harder to just like get people together and do meaningful things, because either you have to get a full group together or you're by yourself, because there's no point to having more than yourself. And so with Pantheon, I'm just glad it's right there. They're like, yeah, this is totally going to happen, and they're building it into the game, right? And I don't know. I just can't wait to finally have a freaking MMO where you can just get together and do stuff, like, and not feel like you're wasting time or that it's ridiculously easy, Yeah,
100%. I mean, that's the number one thing is the challenge. And that's what I'm saying, is making these encounters, making content challenging across different, group makeups, not only class, but number of people. So, can you take on some content somewhere as a 3-person group with a tank, a healer, and a DPS, like just the 3 without like the crowd control, So I just imagine that this might be something that we actually end up, doing some testing on, whether it's in pre-alpha or even in alpha, to try and get a better sense of the range of content that's out there. Because I think you're right. It's sort of the middle area that a lot of people are going to find themselves in, probably more often than not, where you don't have a full group, but you also don't want to just go out and so it's not a game for soloing, where it's not a game where soloing is the norm. So
yeah, and I see the trajectory in game playing out just so naturally, because everyone's afraid, like, oh well, I have to get this full group together, and that's like a social problem, like, or it's it's going to take me an hour to get a group together, and then I'm not going to have enough time to play. Like that's all the like arguments that go into the group centric MMO are kind of shattered when if you can start a dungeon, you just zone in, you're by yourself. Oh, hey, there's one other person here. You duo up with them. You start, killing stuff, but, you can't go too deep, but you can do something. And you find another person. Okay, you go a bit deeper. You find another person. You go a bit deeper until you have a full group and you're at the end of the dungeon as a, big old happy family. It just happens organically like that if the game is set up for it. We just haven't had a game set up for it in ages.
It's so funny. Just hearing you say that makes me think of like all my favorite like fantasy novels all start the same way with one person. They find, a companion, then they meet somebody in a tavern and now they've got their tank, and then they go to a bandit camp where they pick up a healer that's down on their luck or something. The story I'm talking about. It's so ubiquitous.
The growing companionship
Yes, the fellowship grows, right? This is what we're talking about. So you need to have some of that pre-full fellowship content kicking around for people to do. So it's a wonderful sort of approach, I think, and I'm glad to hear that they're testing this. So so that was the Q&A. Now here's something cool. This came sort of unexpectedly because it came from Adam Mostel, their one of their senior content creators or senior
designers,
game designer,
and producer.
I can remember his producer now. Titles. So Adam gave sort of a surprise update on the state of crafting in Pantheon. And this was a really great sense. I don't know how it struck you, but I got the impression it's further along than we think it is.
Oh, yeah.
He spoke about the data tables being filled out, being ready for testing again very soon. There's those two words. But I do feel like it means we should probably look for some more details in the April newsletter, perhaps, and to sort of dovetail and go along with this. If you looked when they showed the datum ascent, they were showing some concept art of the actual mountain, the ascension to the mountain, and some of the plant life. This was Jared Pullen's art, which is very recognizable. We're going to talk about the datum ascent in a bit here, but there was one piece that had a sort of a harvestable resource coming from a kragenweed, I think is the name of it. And it said clearly that only during certain weather conditions would this, whether it's an enemy or whatever it is, have the harvestable resources available. So, and it was actually underlined saying weather specific harvesting. So they did allude to this previously in the HDRP stream part 2, when they were talking about weather effects, what might be available in the fog, in the rain, in the whatever condition that's going on at the time. So now we're seeing it like getting integrated into their design. It was really interesting to see that. They didn't really talk about this on the stream. It was just something that I noticed going through it, but it goes well with what Adam is saying about the crafting. So Desiree, I have 2 questions for you. So first of all, how much will it cost me to get your druid rainmaking abilities in my employ? And 2, do I get a co-host / friend discount on that?
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure that shamans are the rainmakers, actually. So,
oh really? Oh well,
I'm
sorry. We're kind of done here. It's over.
Yeah,
it's
over. We have plenty of shamans in the community though that maybe you could connect with them.
Are any shamans out there looking for co-hosting duties?
Oh, ouch!
Jump in.
Well, I mean, like on the real note though, like I really, really, really hope that these mechanics like exist, but I'm actually not super hoping that it's super like player influence. Like if you cause it to like rain on the plant, right? I just kind of hope it's like a passive or like environmental thing, just for the sake of, not having that weird like, oh, you have to be a shaman to harvest, or whatever.
I think it would be completely unfair. It would be completely like
I love the idea though, because like if you're traveling and you're like it's raining, if you're looking out for this plant or however it ends up working out. So there's still that really cool dynamic there that I can't recall of MMO that's had something like that for harvesting.
No, nor can I actually.
Yeah, it's a novel thing, and that's kind of Pantheon. It's like, hey, what if the genre went this way? And harvesting really hasn't expanded in so many years. So,
Well,
good on them.
yeah, exactly. Like all it takes is one novel idea sometimes that you think everything's been thought of, you think everything's been tried, but you realize that the limits of imagination are so, just there are no limits on it. And you can really come up with an idea that might take off, might be something crazy. So it's really cool. And I think a lot of people got excited when he talked about the crafting update a little bit. So I'd love to hear from Nefel at some point. So
yeah, I mean, we're past due, right? Like on the Nefel update, not to give him a hard time or anything, but it's been so long at this point that, I mean, I would love to just kind of know what the system is looking like, but at the same time, we've gone so long, we might be seeing it in game before we actually get the full mechanical breakdown, which, I mean, I'm not complaining, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. And I think that that might be fun for some folks. I mean, I would like it that way. Some folks probably want more information before deciding if Pantheon's a game for them about the crafting system. And I'm sure, VR recognizes that. But I would love to get a little more detail. And I know Nefel loves to talk about it. So as soon as he's able to, I would imagine he will. So yeah, good stuff, man. All right, let's talk about the really like visual part of the stream where we got to see a new area called the Daedrum Ascent. And honestly, this could have been a stream all by itself because there's a lot going on here. Whether it was like dragons and references to dragons or the verticality of the location, the look of it and so on and so forth. Now they did tease the name of the place in the February newsletter. And I remember we talked about it a little bit. I actually went back and looked at my notes because I'm like, I'm sure Desert and I said something about the Daedrum Ascent. And we did. We were like, what's this? What is this new thing? But here we are 2 months later, a little less than that. And now we're seeing it. So it's really cool. It just adds to that collection of content that they've been pumping out. We also saw Sohirith in its new glory. This is crazy. And the way that they sort of presented it was like the music was super epic. And I think we actually, on the note about the music, just as a side note here, somebody asked during Pantheon Plus U if that was new music. And it's actually from one of their oldest videos, the Bring Friends promo video from like, what year was that? 2016?
Yeah,
maybe?
2016, maybe even earlier, actually. It was a while back. It's a nice throwback kind of a thing, though. I love it.
Yeah. So Ronak clarified that that's what the music was. And it's pretty cool, but it suited it well because it was really an epic moment to see Sohirith like this. Like this, if you're a halfling, if you're playing a halfling, this is like having a house custom built and then going there and checking it out and being like blown away by like, wow, what a great job. Even people who aren't planning on playing halflings probably are now considering it because it was pretty, it was detailed. There was lots of like those little, I want to say the pastel details, which they've talked about. There's lore detail.
It was like a mix of kind of like basic shapes, with texture, and there were like some actual like props. So it wasn't like, the whole thing was detailed, but there were some notes of those props in there, which was kind of a nice touch. It's all in development, like to be super clear, like they said, both of these in-game fly-throughs are, places that aren't done. They're kind of, this is where we're at. We got the basics, stuff here. We've got some of the props. We've got some of the, shapes, and but still it looks awesome, and even better than I was kind of imagining in my head, because it straight up looks like you could put a full city up there. Like it's not small, like it's a major city.
It is, and it was so high up, and there's no guardrails, and that was one of the things that everybody loved. Everybody wants that. I mean, it's such a like encapsulation of what we want in Pantheon in some sort of like representation in the world of no guardrails anymore, right? Like in so many different ways, literal
it is
and
symbolic, right?
figuratively.
Like
Symbolic of what we're looking for, right? I was actually looking at the comments on the video again on their YouTube page. Somebody, and I don't know if you saw this one, but somebody was talking about this and they said, "Oh, I just want to see the bodies of halflings falling on the ground." And then somebody replied, "Splatlings" is what they called them.
oh my gosh,
that's so perfect.
dude, judging by how stinking huge those trees are, like you've got a good while to think about your failures as you're going off of the edge there. Like it's going to be a ways.
Your life's not flashing before your eyes. Your life is like playing on a slow movie reel before your eyes. So it's going to be quite the event. And I agree, we're going to see lots of bodies on the ground, and very much looking forward to that. So somebody pointed out, and this is again during Pantheon Plus U, talking about these shots, these flyby shots that they showed of Sohirith and of Daedrum Ascent, saying, I'm concerned because we didn't see any signs of like NPC populations in the area. And Minus took the opportunity to sort of clarify that. He said, when they use the free roaming camera and your character isn't nearby, it doesn't actually show NPCs because the character isn't there. So that's why they show areas. They can show areas without NPCs so as not to spoil it. So it's sort of like it's a convenient feature, I guess, is the way he's describing it there, is like a way of also not spoiling the content. But the areas, they are populated. There is a build where they have the areas populated with NPCs and with things and creatures. So kind of cool to hear that. I'm not sure exactly, if I'm translating it right. I hope I am, but that's anyway, that's what I took from it. So, yeah. So Desrin, anything else about this, the Daedrum Ascent or Sohirith that you wanted to react to here?
I feel like I just need to like defend my crown here in saying like, in the comments or the chat that you're referencing there, Minus did specifically note like Thronefast when he was talking about people's concerns that it looked empty. Right. There was a shot, where Minus, his character was standing there and there still wasn't NPCs around. Like, so all that to say, while that might be the case with the camera, and not showing NPCs at distance if the character is not around, I mean, the only mobs we've seen like since HDRP conversion have been like the gray box raccoons, and we really have seen very little of actual mobs in in-game footage for a long time. And so I kind of feel like, it might be the case, the camera stuff, but I kind of feel like it's not to say that all of these places are populated already. Like, sorry, but
right. No, that's fair. That's a good counterpoint. Maybe, I don't think either of us, can say definitively what the right sort of, what the truth is there. I hear, if they've done the gray box conversion and the HDRP is, they have an HDRP build that's in place. I don't know. It seems to me like there probably is a good chance that there are NPCs and some at least some creatures or some mobs roaming around.
My thoughts are just that like if they had that, right? If they had finished creatures, and they haven't shown finished creatures in ages, like they should show that. Like they should.
Yeah. Like if you have it, show it.
I mean, don't show everything, but like it's, fly-throughs are great, right? But, people are asking to see, some sort of life. And yeah, but I mean, I still loved the last two segments. Like I still loved those fly-throughs of, in-game. I like that they clearly said it was mid-development, right? Like they've got the base stuff. They don't have the details yet. They don't have the foliage.
Nice. You had to sneak that in there.
Yep. You're welcome. And even Ronick kind of like said the lighting as well, which I think is really important because they did show off the indoor side of Daedrum Ascent, right? And it looks a little odd because it's not lit like an indoor place currently.
Right. Yeah.
And so it was just, I thought it was a great in-between of, hey, this isn't final, but we wanted to show you something that's kind of like in progress. And it hit right, in both cases, it hit right. And I just kind of feel like the concept art is nice, but we're past that now. Like if we have concept art, we should probably get 3D as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the concept art is still super strong. I like it a lot. And I think it provides so much information and detail about stuff and again, we've seen the rate at which things get converted and go from concept art into in-game asset. I think is fairly swift at this point. The Daedrum Ascent, the inside of the temple, the interior shots, I thought they looked, ready in terms of game ready. I know the lighting wasn't in there, but I don't know how much complex.
Well, it'd be like test ready. That's how I think of it. It's like it's test ready, but it's not like launch ready. Yeah.
No. Yeah, but more than mid development. I mean, I think it's further along than that. I think that looked to me like a place that was closer to what I expect the end product's going to look like than midway through. So, okay. But that's, again, we each have our expectations and our ideas of what the post product was, what the final product's going to look like. Nobody really knows. But it's there. The content is being built, and it's being built fairly rapidly, like I said. So I'm content with the way that it looked. I thought it showed well, I guess is what I'll basically leave it at there. So it was a big update. This is a big stream. Anything else that piqued your interest from this, Des, that I didn't touch on here?
I mean, just as like a real quick conclusion on my side, so I don't get left on like a full negative Nancy take, right? But really the feeling, I know that's really vague, but just like it's kind of like what I said on the Plus U, but the stream was just so balanced. It was informative, it was exciting, it was relevant, and it just kind of left me with this feeling of like actual momentum, of a certain like amount of consistency, and it's not that I think every dev stream should be formatted exactly like this, because obviously the deep dives can be really cool as well. But I mean, I would consider this to be kind of the gold standard for VR streams now. I think overall it was just the most successful stream in the generalist sense of the word. And I'd be happy if like half the streams were set up kind of like this, just that here's a little bit from everyone, and just in a straightforward manner, right? But with a little bit of that hype sauce kind of drizzled on top, I think it's just such a great combination of what really is kind of their main communique, minus the newsletter, I guess. But yeah, I'm super, super happy with this stream. I came away with it just feeling like, wow, we are going.
Yeah, it felt complete. I know Pantheon Plus U afterwards, we had a really high number of people watching and commenting. Our green room was hopping. So like it's when that happens, that means that they're onto something. It means that something worked really well. And this feels like a minus idea to get a quick couple paragraphs from each department on what they're doing, let everybody know, and I thought it worked well. Yeah. So I know that they were interested in getting feedback on that too. And again, look at the comments on their video, and it's pretty consistently like quite good. We like this, so do this more, right? So obviously, if you haven't seen it, go check it out. And that's the VR news. Quick notes from us here at Pantheon Plus. We're busy cranking out content, whether it's Pantheon videos or MMO streaming or written articles about Pantheon. We're doing everything. I do have to mention that I did a deep lore dive on the Daedrum Ascent. If you want to learn some more about the lore and discover some of the secrets.
The self-plug. I know. I'm just kidding. It's so good, guys. Like you really should watch it if you haven't already. It's so good.
Go check it out if you haven't. I enjoyed making it. the other thing that's coming up, if you haven't heard about it, is our Pantheon Plus 2022 Dungeon Group Draft. That's coming up April 26th, and we're getting the community together to build out some dungeon groups. This year, we've got some new team captains, player cards. We've been listing those in our Discord and having fun with that. It's going to be epic. There's a link in the description for the promo video, so you can watch that and check out how to take part in it. And last but not least, here's our weekly calendar for the week. Of course, Monday is Drac and his crew doing his midnight EQ adventures on Twitch. Tuesday, we've got Redbeard Flynn putting up, this is Tuesday. We've got Drac did a video about the top 10 EverQuest myths. That'll go up on YouTube. And then, of course, Tuesday night, we're streaming Project Gorgon on our Twitch channel. That's MMOs 101. Wednesday, of course, is Sparrow doing Lord of the Rings online on her Twitch channel at 9 o'clock Eastern. And there is more going on here. I'm just going to quickly hop over into our Discord because I didn't put put it in the graphic, but I don't want to forget. I know Redbeard Flynn. Okay, Redbeard Flynn has an update coming up on Friday for a video on YouTube, so check out his channel. And I know Wizen, one of our article writers for Pantheon Plus, has got a new article coming out. I believe sometime this week. I don't know exactly when it'll be there, possibly on Thursday, but we'll see. So if you are interested in his fan fiction writing, and and the last thing is to get in your voice messages for episode 100 coming up. Thank you for the reminder, Desmond. Yeah. Because I almost forgot, but we've received a couple, and I cannot wait to hear some more from you folks out there. Again, doesn't have to be anything fancy. Quick, hey, thanks for doing the rewind, or whatever you want to say. It can be like 10 seconds. It can be 2 minutes. Your call. So just
I mean, the pledges are on the line, and I mean, the more people that do it, obviously makes the contest a little bit more interesting, but also, come on, guys, we want to put all this stuff in the rewind, right? I mean, totally. So yeah, get them in.
Do it. So and having said that, that's it for this week's VR News and Notes. When the Pantheon community speaks, we listen. So let's dig into the forums and fan projects to see what the discussion's all about.
All right. I feel like we haven't been to the forums in a while.
It's been a while.
So, even though it was a dev stream week and I knew it was going to be a lot of talk, but I'm going to kind of brute force this section if you all don't mind. And this one comes from DagnyStout on the official forums. And from this thread's titled Rate of Faction Gain as a Reward or Punishment Mechanic. So I'm going to quickly try to summarize this so we can have a little chat. But Dagny kind of mentions that the previous Parting the Veil got them thinking about like questing and like perception systems being really nonlinear. And from what it sounds, it's just going to be a lot less straightforward than we're used to, right? It's not just good and evil anymore. It leaves a door open for a lot of interesting faction gameplay. I also just realized it's not Parting the Veil. It's the Dev Roundtable because we're talking about sorry. But
that's okay. I knew what you meant. That's all.
just in case anyone got confused there. But this is talking about some JN stuff and. But yeah, anyway, the idea that they put forward is just kind of a really small change to a faction system, but I thought it was pretty interesting. The Dagny's idea is that some actions that you might do, instead of just a flat faction change, they might add a kind of multiplier to your normal faction gain or loss, depending on the severity of the action that triggers it. So an example, because I think this makes it make a lot more sense, but the examples, like if you kill a really noteworthy NPC, you get kind of a temporary multiplier that makes it harder to gain standing with that faction for a while. Because, they just saw you, take this dude out. They're not going to be apt to, give you any benefit of the doubt for at least a while. And so, on the other side of it, if you just like accidentally, AoE one of someone's sheep Like it's, not as big of
You
a
mean
deal, right? And so you might
not
not,
the end of the world.
yeah, you might not get like a multiplier for that and just a small little faction dunk. And it's just on the other side, the positive, if you do something like extremely noteworthy, maybe that faction has you on their mind, right? For a short time, so that it makes it easier to gain faction. So yeah, it's just a really small change, but I don't know. I kind of like it.
Yeah, I do too. It is interesting, and I think that it could play really well with the perception system from what we know
Yeah.
about it, because the perception system is all about flagging and about you've talked to this person and you've done these actions, therefore you have this flag on your character that says so, tells the game you've done this, and now if you have that flag, the perception, the faction hit is either more or less. I think something like that is maybe
that
where
makes
this
sense. Yeah.
kind of leads. I don't know.
Yeah, I just like it for kind of the believability side. It's so small, but I think it would be a noticeable change that would it would kind of change how you play to be a little bit more immersive, right? Because if you think about it, we're what we're used to is a faction system where like, oh well, you just like slaughtered a group of dudes right in front of all their friends, but as long as you go and take out whoever they don't like, you just immediately, it goes right back up like nothing happened.
Yeah, it's like a 1-to-1 relationship, right? Like if you kill 5 kings, it's the same as killing 5 sheep.
Exactly.
Right?
And so I like the kind of non-linear and kind of more dynamic nature of it, right? Especially if it's just like temporary, because eventually, maybe they don't have you on their mind. But there's a certain like freshness, like it's not always the same thing. And that lack of like static, up and down, I think it really matters. It makes the game feel more like a world, right?
Well, and I think that when we've seen gameplay demonstrated in Pantheon by the devs, you see a lot of faction stuff going on in the background, right? You do see a lot of like when Ko is killing things, every time he kills something, there's like, your faction with this has gone up and down with this. It's very, reminiscent of EverQuest, although EverQuest didn't always tell you were getting faction hits or pluses or minuses. So I think to take it to the next level is something along the lines of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think it's already like set up to do that and could probably be implemented fairly easily. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I the idea in my head is pretty fun because we're used to like kind of killing just trash mobs, right? For faction. But what this,
like grinding for faction.
What this could mean is like, you'd want to find out who really matters, like what, NPCs really matter, and like take them out first so that, you're fresh on their enemies' minds, right? So you're like, oh, well, if I go for the big bad first, I'm going to have this like kind of multiplier to really like push myself. It's going to make these guys more mad at me faster, but it's probably going to, do the inverse as well. And just instead of just making it, really bland, right? I make it a little bit interesting. Like that changes. Oh, I have to kill this boring stuff over and over, 227 times to get my faction right versus, okay, I need to find the big bad,
Or even like you were saying, what if there's a time factor to it? Right?
Oh yeah.
So, if you kill one, the faction hit is like 5, but if you kill something of the same faction within the next 2 minutes, it's multiplied then. I get the idea here, and I think it's really cool because it adds in so many different layers to how much faction goes up or down with something. Like, and I mean, EverQuest players correct me here, but I know back in the classic days, I mean, killing Nagafen and the faction hit you took from that, whatever faction it affected, or Lady Vox or whatever, was huge. So you lost major faction with the ice giants of whatever, as opposed to like killing one ice giant didn't get you the same faction hit. So the numbers are one thing, but then you can, this idea here is like to add in different other variables.
Yeah, so it's not
Time.
like, 800 ice giants equals one Lady Vox, because, Lady Vox is this iconic figure. Like, obviously that's going to have a lasting impression more than, some throwaway ice giants. Like, that's...
Yeah.
It just... Yeah.
And as we're talking about this, the devs have talked about this. Pantheon devs have talked about faction in this way. So I know, and obviously DagnyStout knows as well, that this is something that they're interested in doing.
Yeah.
So
well, let's get to some responses real quick. I noticed we've got Dorothea over here on the kind of extreme end. And just straight up says, like, this doesn't go nearly far enough. And it says, if you whack someone important, it should make you immediately KOS and be difficult or impossible to recover. And then we've got, like, Vandrad agreeing as well. I think others in the thread kind of go that direction. And they add that, like, faction should just, in the first place, it should always be easier to lose faction than to gain it, right?
That's an important consideration for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And I like that this kind of can be applied both ways too. But I think that is a good thing to remember. And then a few folks in the thread, like Counterflesh and Chenzi here, point out that there should be kind of a similar difference if there's like witnesses, kind of more examples on how to expand this, because it doesn't have to just be like, who you kill, but maybe when you kill, or
who knows about
it. Exactly. Because we do have the smart AI, like, exactly. And so that could tie in.
That's a really cool idea. I love that. I mean, I think that's super cool. And this is a rogue's dream scenario, right? As long as nobody sees you, you don't take the faction hit. Like,
yep.
Oh man, what if that was the case? What if you could just, kill basically whatever you wanted in game, and as long as nobody saw you, as long as there was no NPCs within a certain radius, there was no faction hit at all? Because honestly, that logically
kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
But eventually maybe they'd find the body or something. But like, I like the dynamism, right? I think the main overarching theme here is that if everything's just always the same, it's just this like linear, if I do X happens, with no factors, it gets boring.
It just becomes a spreadsheet at that point.
But when you start layering all these different possibilities, I feel a lot of players end up just kind of being like, well, I'm just going to do what intuitively makes sense because I don't want to go through the hassle of like figuring every detail out. And then for the people that do figure every detail out, it kind of gives them this mini game, right? Of like, ooh, okay, so I found out that this particular guy has connections to this faction, and so we're gonna invis our way up to this guy and then kill him and then clear our way back so that we like maximize our it just adds something.
That's fun, right? Yeah, it does add something. You're right, and I think that's fun. I think when you add in little dynamics like that and really cool mechanics that go beyond just a plus or minus a number, I think you really start getting into what it means to live in the world.
Yes.
You're not just playing a game, you're living in the world. You can add in, you could talk about things like day-night time, day-night cycle. You could talk about things like, I don't know. There's just a lot of different directions you can go with this. And I think making faction really dynamic is something that a lot of people really like.
Yeah.
So it's a good idea. And I know, like I said, the devs are definitely thinking along these lines. So because I've heard them talk about this before.
Yeah. And I think the main reason I wanted to grab this was just because, hey, look how much a small like change or like a small difference in the design can actually like really take the dynamism to 11, right? And so I hope this gets traction. Actually, this is admittedly a bit of a kind of like call to action, because the thread kind of leaves leaves the idea that that was originally presented here, and poor Dagny tries to like get it back on track, because it ends up just kind of being like, well, I think if you ruin your faction, it should be permanent. Well, I don't think that, and it kind of just goes back and forth. So if you're listening and you have some great ideas to add on to this, maybe like jump in the thread and give poor Dagny like some some justice for his idea,
Yeah.
and give it a little bit of visibility. Flesh the idea out, because I think it's great.
Yeah, I agree, man. Go over the forums, and you should be checking the forums, once in a while anyway. If you're a fan of Pantheon, or you're interested in the community and the ideas out there, because there are still quite a few good discussions going on over there, and it's worthwhile, if nothing else, to check the introductions and see who's around that week and that kind of thing. So
yep.
Yeah.
And as usual, links in the description or the show notes, whatever you want to call it, if you want a nice, easy way to get in there. But that is going to be it for this week's community discussions.
Sit back and relax. It's time for the lore you know. So what is the Daedrum Ascent? Is it a temple? Is it a dungeon? Is it home to one of Terminus's denizens? Or maybe all of the above? We learned a little bit about its history and the draconian themes that are prevalent there. We learned of the materials used in its construction and some details of the dangers that remain. So why don't we listen to the lore that was given to us about the Daedrum Ascent? And this is the work of Jan Gerhardt and Jared Pullen, from what I'm to understand, two of VR's superstars. And let's listen to it as I read this week's Lore You Know. The Daedrum Ascent is a windswept crag carved into the mountains of Wild's End. Despite the overall traversal being a bleak, wind-hammered escarpment set in slate tones and muted grays, strong material variants arrive in the form of rich, fiery impositions of lichen and coarse, wire-like cragganweed, whose varnished copper outcroppings and foliage thrust upward into the stony tundra to offer stark contrast. The sheer blackened incline of ascent terminates in an imposing edifice, a fortress-like structure, angular and repetitious in its design sensibilities, where the draconian aesthetic holds sway. Ancient polished stone of dense onyx, enshrined in metallized silver and gunmetal leaf, harmoniously dressed by opulent fabrics, wrought in royal regal purple, laced with cardinal ruby. While ever present, the sharp hot scent of dragon is a beguiling incense, the visible and incandescent breath that pervades the height of Daedrum Ascent. Beware the talon blight, dear traveler, as you make your way up this tortuous crag, for its fearsome touch still lingers on the mountain stone rent long ago, torn asunder by frightful dragon rage. Still corrosive to the touch, yet bearing its baneful curse. Of course, there are many things to discover for the risks and danger that finds home in the Daedrum Ascent. And that is the lore you know. So I know that was exactly verbatim what we heard on stream, minus reading, but I always like to put my own little
I'm sorry
my own twist on it, and throw a little music to it, and give it some feeling. And I thought that it was worthy of it, so I really enjoy doing that. But I don't know about you, Des, but that was a long stream, and or a long development update to go through with you, and I'm exhausted. I feel like we covered a lot of ground. I actually feel like I climbed the Daedrum Ascent maybe a little. So, how are you feeling right now?
Oh man, I'm gonna finish my very caffeinated beverage and probably collapse.
So you'll be collapsed until we record again next week, and that is a good segue into reminding everybody that I want to thank everyone for checking us out. I want to thank you as well, Desert, as I always do, for being the co-host with the mostest. And everyone, remember that Pantheon Plus here, we're all about community, and one day, in Pantheon, we'll all be adventuring together in this wonderful world that awaits us. So I'll leave it there. And then, until then, we're here to keep your spirits high. So cheers, and we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Pantheon Plus Rewind. Pantheon Plus is not affiliated with Visionary Realms. Be sure to check out our Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube channels under the name Pantheon Plus. You can follow Theric at Pantheon Theric on Twitter, and Desrin at DesrinDoes also on Twitter. And you can stay up to date with all things Pantheon at www.pantheon.plus. Until next time, cheers. Cheers, and thanks for listening.